Hello and welcome to what is part 2 and probably the last on the turntable. It's 99% finished. All I've got to do is find a cartridge and install the switch plate that just snaps into place, but I'm not going to bother with that until the drawer is built to slide this thing in and out of the cabinet, and that'll be part of the cosmetic restoration. Forgot to film an intro for this part 2, so this is it. It's already done. I've been busy. I've been putting up more sheetrock walls, putting in some shelving, making this other part of the lab down here, which is the $10 test bench, a little more livable. This was all just one big pile of junk. Still a lot of junk, but we've been improving and cleaning up. We need at some point to get all of these filing cabinets out of here and get sheetrock up on those walls. This is the $10 test bench area, as you've seen previously, and we're slowly in the process of getting another room built down here, but it's all a matter of time. We'll eventually get a floor put in here and ceiling, drop ceiling or sheetrock up against the top. At any rate, we'll get those finished off. But that's well down the road. I did some damage to my back hauling sheetrock and plywood down here to do what's here, and I'm still trying to recover from that. But at any rate, that's my problem. We're going to get on with the video of the turntable. Hope this information is useful to somebody, and we'll jump right into it. Thanks for stopping in. And I've just tried my hand at flocking the turntable. I bought a kit online. Came with an adhesive that you paint on. And I said, it's going to be a whole lot easier just to use a good wet coat of Rust-Oleum. I hope that works out. I think it'll be fine. It's looking pretty good. One thing that every website I saw, every video I saw that said, you know, how to do that told how to do the flocking, they said, when you think you have too much on there, put some more. So that's what I did. I went around this thing about 9 times. I've used about half this bag of flocking, and it looks like I have 100 times more than I need on there right now. But they all also said, let it sit for 18 to 24 hours before you touch it. That's to let everything dry. So I'm just going to slide this off to the side. It looks pretty good. There's a few places where it looks a little clumpy, but that won't be in the adhesive. It's on top, and I'm not going to try to disturb it. I went around it and around it and around it, and it came with one of these little squeezy bottles. And I just kept going around it and around it and around it and dumping more and dumping more and dumping more until I could see I was blowing stuff back off. It wasn't staying on any longer. So I've got at least 3 times what I think should be on there, but they said just keep adding it. You can't hurt it. You want as much on there as you can. So that's what I did. We'll see how it turns out. Okay, the flocking has appeared to come out pretty good. It's on there well, you know, it's stuck very well. All I did is spray paint it with a nutmeg paint that kind of matched the color of the flocking. It's a little bit lighter than the other one was, but I don't think it looks bad. I think that'll be absolutely fine. And I just dropped it in here to see how it was going to look against the finish. So I think I am going to proceed with reassembling the rest of the turntable now that the platter is ready. But I think I'll remove this. Well, let's see. We're on a soft cloth here. Now, to put this wheel on, I've got to have the... I don't want to do a lot of handling of the turntable because I'm going to have to grease the mechanism. I think I'll take the platter out of here, lubricate a bunch of stuff, put this tower assembly back together. And I think the last thing I'll do is drop the platter in. And when I drop the platter in, I have to affix this drive wheel to the shaft underneath so that it will turn the cam mechanism that drives everything else. And again, that looks nasty, but it's going to be covered with grease and oil and inside the mechanism when it's done. I keep looking at it thinking I should polish it up and paint it, but I think that's going a bit too far, especially as this is not the original turntable. I am going to keep searching for the original one. But for now, I want to get this operational and on the drawer so that when I get back next year, I can do the finish work on the cabinet, get the clear coat on it, and get everything put together. Let me get the platter off and we'll turn this thing, we'll start working on the rest. Okay, we've knocked together a bit of a stand here because I have to be able to get to both sides of this as I'm assembling it. This isn't nearly as nice as the rotisserie that David Tipton's made, but this should serve the purpose. We have actual phonograph lubricant here, Phonolube. This is many years old. This tube used to be quite large. And a precision oiler for the smaller bits. Now this mechanism needs to slide, so I think I will put a little lubricant here, shove it down, and then we'll this stuff is supposed to be viscous enough not to travel around. Now these are U-shaped, so this only needs lubricant about 180 degrees around the bottom. So we'll work that in there, and then we'll pull this down, add some up here so that it picks it up and moves it in both directions. Oh, that feels better already. You could tell it was dry, just the way it was moving. And just a touch more in here. It's a shame everything's so nice and clean, you hate to get it gooey. Let's see here. If I push this down, work it in. This should have some grease on it because this slides on a little cam. Work that in. There's a... Okay, need a little lubricant here. Take the precision oiler. Give a little drop or two down in here just to let that move. And we're going to continue to do that all the way around. Let's see if I missed any sliding surfaces. I have up top. I will have to I'll put a little bit of grease on that. Sorry you can't see it. And right there. Just on the sliding surfaces. Spring should return that, and it isn't. work a little lubricant into the shaft here. Everything's so dry because it's been cleaned. I think I had better take this out of here. Let the oil work down in that shaft. Can you see what's going on? I don't think you can see. While I'm here, I'm going to put a little bit of lubricant inside of here. Let me get a Q-tip. Okay, we flipped it over. And we're going to get a little lubricant on this bushing. And with some over here. This is where the platter rotates. Now it sits on an actual bearing, but it's guided or leveled or held in place by these two bushings, so they need to be lubricated. That's moving quite freely. We don't want to put too much lubricant in here, but we do want to make sure that everything slides, you know. And I'm always torn about, put a drop in there, put a drop in here, a couple on the back, and I'll give the idler a little bit. Boy, that idler just clears that pivot, but it does clear it. Oh, what a difference that made. That's nice and loose now. All right. Let's swing this back around and put some more of the bits and pieces together. What did I do with the shaft? Oh, there it is. We'll put a little bit of lubricant on this, some grease on it, slide it up into position. This is the lever that lifts the tone arm. It serves two purposes. It goes up and down to lift the tone arm, as well as actuates the mechanism up on the little tower that releases the next record. And I've forgotten which side of the cam that goes on. I better go back and look at my photograph. It's funny how you think you're going to remember things. But when this drives back, it rotates that arm. Alright, let me get my pictures out so I can put this back together correctly. Okay, simple enough. This faces towards the reject mechanism, and it's part of the mechanism to bring the arm back away from the platter. Hits that little piece sticking out and assists it in coming back. I'm going to slip the platter in. I've got the bearings installed up there already. And now I need to install this guy. These are special set screws. They're not hex key. They're not screwdriver. They are Bristol. And I got them out by modifying a small screwdriver, but when it came time to put it back together, I said I should probably buy the right toolkit. So I picked up this Exolite kit of Bristol wrenches, and I'll tell you what, you'll swallow your tongue when you go to buy these. They ain't cheap. But it is an Exolite set. They're not hex. They're not square. And I did replace one of them. One of them, somebody had been in here with something, probably trying to take it apart at some time, and the head had been completely rounded out. Fortunately, I had a set screw that fit. And I had to replace it with one that is an actual Allen screw. And no, I didn't strip it out. I couldn't get anything to fit in there to even give it any torque. And when I looked at it under magnification, I could see it had been completely rounded out. So we've replaced that. Yeah, see, that doesn't fit either. We'll get this in here. I've got the new oiler cork that I made on the laser, because the one that was in here fell apart. The two that were under the turntable proper were absolutely fine, but the one that was on top of this had disintegrated. So we'll get this guy in here, slide it into place. Platter down to where it's sitting on the bearing, and we'll lift this up a little bit so that it isn't dragging on the aluminum, and tighten up its screws. There we go. So that the platter is actually sitting on the bearing up there, and this is just kind of hanging openly in space, so it doesn't rub on the bottom. There's two bushings here, but they're just to keep the axle or shaft or whatever you want to call it aligned. Go in with my brand new Bristol wrench. Oh, well, that was silly. Okay, I gotta go fish the set screw out of there. I'm talking. Not trying to get in front of the camera, so I'm looking at an angle, and I didn't realize I didn't have the shaft all the way down. I drove the screw right out of the, I don't know what to call that, arbor, whatever it is. So now I'll have to drop it out of here. I don't want to drop the turntable, the freshly flocked turntable. There we go. Where did the set screw go? It's evaporated. Good grief. Did it end up inside the turntable? Nope, it's not in there. This is what I didn't want to have happen with grease all over my fingers. Good. Oh, I just heard something hit the floor. No, that's the bearing. Yeah. Alright, I'm going to turn the camera off until I get this mess cleaned up. Okay, we've located the set screw. It fell down inside this aluminum casting. There it is. We have it. I was about to give up and take up knitting. We'll screw that back in. I think what happened when I slid it, the platter on the first time, is I had the set screw in too far, and I thought I had bottomed out, but I'd hit the set screw, so because it was sticking out. So as I tightened it up, it just fell inside. Now that my hands are good and greasy, I gotta go clean my hands before I handle that platter again. Bear with me. One moment, please, as Big Clive would say. Okay, but unlike Big Clive, we are putting it back together. I'll slide this guy back in, part way. Install my newly made lasered lubrication cork. Try sliding this on one more time. Not a lot of room to work. I gotta push the platter up just ever so slightly. There we go. Slip the cork washer on. Slide this in place. Work the platter down into it. Use my knuckles because they're obviously cleaner. And let's not make the same mistake we made last time. I'm going to back the set screws out a little bit more. Just to make sure, yeah, see, it's not going down inside, it's sitting on the screws still. No, that's not it. There we go. Now it went in. I had to use a variety of tools on this to get it apart. Simply because I didn't have a Bristol wrench set. See, this doesn't fit. Well, it does turn that a little bit. But this isn't the correct one. This is more of a Torx. This is the Bristol wrench. Oh, you know what? I bet I'm not inside the idler yet. I bet I haven't. Trying to talk, trying to do things. Yeah, the idler wheel is still not inside, so I'm still not all the way down in. So I'm going to back that off. Slip the idler wheel inside the platter. There's so many gotchas. This is the worst turntable design I think I've ever seen. There we go. Okay. We have now engaged the idler. Bearings tight. That's pushed up. You got to be a contortionist to put this thing together. Okay, that one's tight. It's turning nice and freely. That one's tight. We'll give this other one just another snug here. Where I would find those set screws, I'm not sure. There we go. Oh, the idler's engaging nicely. When I turn the platter, it's spinning the motor. So it appears that's going to drive the turntable nicely. Flipping that rubber inside out seemed to have done the trick. Now, we'll put this guy on. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on this shaft. This is a high pressure or high friction area. Slide that around. Try not to get it on the rubber. Okay, that's installed. Put the retaining screw in. Okay, good and tight. And there's a spring. Let me recover that. This spring goes, there's a hole over here on the side. Alright, that's engaged. And we'll slip it over this post. That's done. That keeps the wheel, this turned over here. Otherwise, in that position, it's not even touching. It's not touching the drive, so the spring makes sure that it catches it. There we go. The bladder's turning. That's turning. It appears maybe I should just connect. Let me get some AC and make sure that's going to drive. Okay. We took a Wago connection here. WAGO. If you haven't used these things, these are the greatest inventions in sliced bread. There's a different type of these that they're even using for house wiring in Europe, and now they're starting to use them here in the US as well. I'm going to plug this in and see what happens. It's driving it around, and it's completed the cycle and locked out. And if I was to activate it, I can see this compress as it goes through the cycle here, and it is working well. It's being driven very cleanly. Perfect. Looks like this thing's going to work. That'll drop the tone arm right where it, yep, perfect. That puts the tone arm at the beginning of the record, and then as it plays, as it moves in, click, cycles for the next record. Alright. This piece here, of course, isn't connected yet at the top. If you watch, I'm going to hold this down. This will push my finger back as it, that's the tone arm lift. See it push my finger back. And then go back in as it sets the tone arm back down on the next record. There's a little ramp down in here that bears against this spring and this bushing. Okay, that's working remarkably well for a first try. It's driving it right through the highest torque part of the cycle without any problems. I'm looking at the flange on the tone arm, and it's not very round, or very concentric, I guess would be the correct term. But I don't suppose that affects the record any, because the record is indexed from the very center, but the platter is not concentric to the axle. But that should have no effect on the playability. I'm just having fun now, watching the thing cycle. Okay, we'll unplug this and put some more of the mechanism together. I'm gonna have to move the camera. Okay, now we're going to try to fit the tone arm to this thing and see if we can get the timing correct on everything. And I know somebody out there saw this pushing my finger away. As I said, that's what raises the arm, and they're going to say, no, that's lowering the arm. And in most cases you'd be right. However, this is a very strange mechanism in its entirety. Up inside of here is a little pin or a boss, and this sits on the pivot. This is located up on top, and as this shaft is pushed down, it pulls this down which bears on that little pin and lifts the tone arm. And I'm thinking to myself right now, this is going to be a whole lot of fun to get these parts together, because I have to get this, well, let me tip this down here. Gently, 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 don't scratch anything. This goes on here. This spring sits on top. No, wrong. Okay, this sits on here. The tone arm goes on. Spring goes inside. This goes back on it, pulls the thing up, and then this piece sits, and we in frame, I hope we're in frame, this piece sits way up on top, and this lever is up here, or no, excuse me, wrong again. This is the adjustment collar. Okay, this one sits on top of this, pushes it down, and when it's all together, this little arm sits on the top, rocks back and forth. That's what pushes on this mechanism, which releases the next record. So I'm going to turn the camera off, because I'm going to have to be jumping around getting all of these pieces in here. It's going to be an exercise in frustration, and trying to work around the camera as I'm doing this is just going to push me over the edge. So I'm going to get these pieces installed inside the tone arm and see if I can get the timing correct. There are witness marks where the little set screws were in there, so it should be somewhat clear how to do this, but I've got to play with this for a few minutes, so I'll be back. Alright, we managed to get all the pieces back inside there, and this part of the mechanism seems to be okay, but when I got this turntable, it wasn't behaving correctly, or at least I didn't think it was, but I just said, I'll clean all the mechanism, put everything back together, and I do have the instructions, and we'll see what happens. I was able to put all of the little collars back where they were by simply feeling around for the witness mark and putting everything back, and they're the only marks that were on the shafts. So I've got to believe they're in the right place. But when I got this, I ran it, and it just, I turned it, and it just didn't seem to be functioning correctly. Right now it's dropped roughly where a 10-inch record would be, and if I move it over, it should eject. And it won't. Every once in a while, no, it's not going to eject. If I push the eject button, it works. And it goes back over, drops down roughly where a 10-inch record should sit. But if I push it over, it should be cycling and picking up the next record. And if I mess with, there we go, that time it works. So something's still sticky inside there or out of alignment. And another problem I've got, when you turn this mechanism here, it rotates that whole cam down at the bottom so that the stop is in a different position for the 12-inch record, so the tone arm will drop over here. But that's not working correctly, because if I eject it, and it's not even going to eject this time. If I get it to eject, there we go. This is exactly what it was doing. Goes over, drops on the post, and then snaps over here, and it would clunk onto the platter if I didn't have my hand there. And when I come over, and again, it doesn't eject. And this is exactly what it was doing when I got it. So I've got to get underneath there and take another look at the mechanism and see if I can figure out what's going awry. I give it a, no, see? There we go, now it worked. So something is still sticky underneath there. And something's out of adjustment for the 12-inch. There is a set screw underneath there that pushes against the cam that will adjust the drop position. That's got to be moved over so the 12-inch record's correct. But what's causing this failure to select the next record, I don't know. The button does work fine, but you can see what happens. It bounces off of here and it would crash into the platter. I've about had it for tonight. I've been working all day, came down here, figured I'd spend a couple of hours putting this thing back together. All this is where the switch plate goes. That's sitting over on the other bench. I'll hook all of that up when the time comes. I haven't even hooked up the tone arm wires. Oh, the cartridge that I said was dead earlier on. I looked at the connections where the wires slide on and they were kind of corroded, so I cleaned them up and then I hooked it up to my Heathkit signal tracer, and I'm getting something out of the cartridge. Whether it's enough to drive the audio amp correctly, I don't know. We'll find out. But there is some signal coming out of that crystal cartridge. But I've got to get this mechanism figured out first of all. I've got to find out what's wrong with this and get it back in operation. Yeah, that sometimes doesn't work either. Oh, there it goes. And again, you can tell the difference when I turn this around. It swings that whole cam on the bottom, and it will come back and correctly or close to correctly for a 10-inch record. No, didn't do it that time. Try it again. I think something's still sticking underneath there. No, it's starting to bounce off of the... that time it worked correctly. So something's not working correctly underneath there. Once I get it to correctly go where a 10-inch record would go, then it repeatedly goes there. Okay, I'm going to pick this up tomorrow. For you, it'll be a couple of seconds. I'm going to go upstairs, take a shower, and watch a little mindless television. See what Buzz 1151 or David Tipton or somebody is up to, and see what kind of woes they're having. Okay, folks, we're about to find out if I'm hero or zero here. I've been making this cycle quite a few times with just a single record. Now I just put the spindle back in, put the rest of the tower on, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this will drop the next record correctly. Okay, there's the second record. Let's see if it'll do the next one. This has been a very frustrating journey. As you saw from, well, it would last night for me, just a few seconds ago for you. I had hit a point where I'd had enough. I went to bed. I came down here, and for a couple of hours I've been playing with this, and finally light dawned over Marblehead. And I got the mechanism working. Now this is still a crappy turntable. When it gets to the last record, it has no way of knowing that. There's nothing to sense it. And it will play the last record for eternity. Over and over and over again. And what you have to do to stop this thing is a couple of methods. You can eject from here and shut the power off when the tone arm is over there, or it tells you to pick the tone arm up and listen to this. Oh, it didn't do it. It ejected. It said it might do that as well in the instructions. You hang the tone arm there. You have to pick it up off the record and then shut it off. There is absolutely no mechanism to totally interrupt and stop the cycle, and there's nothing to sense when the last platter has been dropped. But it does work, other than the cartridge has died again. It showed signs of life briefly the other day, but it has quit working again, and I'm going to have to come up with something for that at some point. But I have to build a drawer for this and get everything in. I'll get everything wired in and finished. Changing the cartridge will be a trivial matter once all that's done. What happened? Well, whoever played with this before, I went back to the original witness marks, thinking, you know, this would be a piece of cake to put all back together. Turns out those witness marks that I looked at were not correct, and I took it all apart, tore the whole thing down again, and looked at it very carefully under magnification and found a second set of witness marks that were much lighter and answered a lot of the questions I had. What was happening? Let me get the tone arm over here so I can turn the camera. Down over here, the tone arm mechanism rides on about a 5/1000 inch thick copper washer that's between this base and this tone arm mount, and that was sitting proud of that about 3/16 of an inch. And I kept looking at that going, that just doesn't look right. You know, the tone arm didn't look like it was going down far enough, but I took it apart and slid it back on the shaft, and it would hit a point where it simply wouldn't go any further. And the end of the shaft, the end of the post is tapered. And I thought, well, maybe there's an internal taper on this piece, and I looked at that under magnification, and there wasn't. There was a big snag of a burr on the inside of that, and it wouldn't go all the way down on. And what was happening, I hope this will show up here clearly. This is that piece, there's that copper washer. Here's the little fork mechanism that catches on the button on the back of the tone arm, so that when this shaft down here is pulled down by this spring, when this cam plate slides back, there's a ramp right here, pushes down on this, pulls the shaft down. That shaft pulls this down and causes the tone arm to lift. I set the tone arm height per the instructions, but what was happening, I figured out when I was having problems. The tone arm, when it was down in the play position, it took nearly 60 grams to get the tone arm when it was floating in the air to push over it, and it felt grindy. It was like two gritty pieces, like a galled up screw thread. And I built myself a little gram force gauge here. I took a light spring and figured out how much force it took to get the tone arm to move, and then I took my gram scale, and it was 50 to 55 grams, I guess, to get the tone arm to even move sideways, which is ludicrous. And that's when I figured out what was going on. That piece was not seated all the way down the bottom, and when this tone arm fell down, lifted up on this fork, pulled this shaft up against this spring, and 1, 2, 3 pieces, this is the piece that moves back and forth, rotates with the tone arm, that sits on top of this plate, that plate sits on top of this plate, and the shaft comes up through this spring, and those 3 pieces were being compressed together every time the tone arm came down to the play position, because this collar here was in the wrong spot. And it took some finagling. I had this thing apart about 5 times before light dawned over Marblehead as to what was happening. And I cleaned off the witness marks that somebody else had put in there, got this collar, I cleaned up the burr in this collar, got this collar to slide down over this post correctly. Once I had done that, then I went back and reset the height of the tone arm so that, it clears everything as it picks it up. And the mechanism became free. It now moves side to side very, very easily because it's no longer being pinched. Between this spring and this spring, we're pinching these 3 plates together. And even though they were clean and lubricated, it just was way too much friction. And what this thing was doing, and it's something, you can hear that, it tells you it'll do that. There's a release mechanism in there. What would happen is it would start to drop the tone arm, and then it would drop on the post, and then the tone arm would snap over to here and drop, skidding across the record, and then it wouldn't play. It would just sit there and keep jumping grooves because it took so much force to move the tone arm sideways. I hope that explanation made sense. It took me a while to get my head around what was going on. And there's still a lot of people out there, I bet, don't understand when I say the shaft goes down to lift the tone arm up. This shaft is pulled down by this plate, which has a ramp in it right here. Bears against this bushing, pushes this spring, which pushes this shaft down. That shaft pulls on this collar, which is your rest position adjustment. Am I in the frame? Oh, here we go. That's your rest position adjustment. Bears on the top of this, has a little fork on the back which catches a nub on the tone arm. The tone arm pivots up in the front of it, and it lifts the tone arm up. But when the weight of the tone arm was hanging against this piece, compressing this spring against this, which was pulling this shaft up, there was just no way the mechanism was going to work. So I bet this thing hasn't worked in years. Somebody took it apart, couldn't figure out what was wrong. So we'll be putting this in a safe place for now to keep it protected. I have to get on with building the base for this, which is actually a drawer that slides in and out of the cabinet. I'll have to do some experimenting. I've got the information on what the impedance of these crystal cartridges is. There's an explanation in the the brochures that list these, how to test them for the voltage output, and it tells you what the impedance should be. They come in several different voltages. I'll have to do some experiments. I'll build something so I have the correct impedance going into the radio, and I'll test various voltages and see what range of voltage I want the cartridge to be, and move forward from there. Surprisingly, these offset needles are still available. This needle is removable, and they actually sell these. There's a website that actually sells these. I can get new ones, but they don't have crystal cartridges. They have only magnetic cartridges. I don't want to put a lot of money into this because this is not the correct turntable. You know, it'll be in there, it'll look, it's period correct, it has the right name on the data plate that goes here. It says Midwest, but it is not the correct turntable, so I don't want to go crazy on this. It's in good operating condition at this point, and after I find the correct one, maybe somebody will want to buy this one from me, or maybe we can work a trade, who knows. The other turntable looks like this, and you can see along the front edge, the leading edge as it comes out of the drawer, there's a, I don't know what to call it, a boss. It sticks up. You can see from the picture what it looks like, and it doesn't look like this one. This one doesn't have anything in here. And the one that's in the picture doesn't have this tower. It has a different mechanism, as you can see here, that keeps the platters flat and allows them to drop in. And I suspect from the look of it, it also automatically shuts off after the last record is played. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. I've got 4 weeks now at this point, 3.5 weeks until I head for Thailand. 3.5 weeks, I guess. I still have a ton of stuff on my plate to get done, and I'm itching every night to get down here and work on this thing and do something with it, but I just don't have the time. I can't afford it at this point. I just ordered an HVLP spray gun today for the cabinet, and I also ordered an airbrush to do some detailing work. So I'm hoping, I've got the doors back out at this point, but I'm hoping when I get back next spring, I'll be able to get the cabinet outside and get a clear coat on that. I'll put a blanket or a sheet over it for the, you know, until I come back, just to keep the dust from settling on it. But we don't have time. I just do not have the time. I'm not going to try to kill myself trying to get this done. So thanks for stopping by. If you ever hold one of these turntables, that's one thing to look for. If it's not cycling correctly, make sure that this is sitting down all the way down on its copper thrust washer, I guess you could call it. It goes between the two pieces of aluminum and allows this to slide back and forth easily, but oh, it just clicked back into the other position. Again, that's perfectly normal. That's part of the mechanism underneath. It has a release that's spring-loaded. So after setting the height and with the tone arm sitting loosely down, it should be free to pivot back and forth without binding. I'm the radio mechanic. We're going to move on. Take care. Thanks for stopping by. Stay well. See you soon.